Right, I think we'll get started with this evening's cross-border dialogue. Welcome to all. Thank you so much for joining us this evening for a conversation between Vicky Moufawad-Paul, Bana Kattan, and guest moderated by Nasrin Himada. Cross-Border Dialogues is a series of conversations between programmers, based in Canada and the United States. This series is organized by Sally Frater and hosted by the Art Gallery of Guelph. As we start our time here together, I'd like to suggest a moment of reflection to contemplate the place where we're all gathering, even though we are physically distanced across Turtle Island, and the land on which we each live, work, and create. I myself, as a second generation Canadian of Eastern European background, I recognize that I've been granted privileges to live on this land, and I have access within this society and on this land that others do not experience. And so because of this, I think of land acknowledgements as a reminder to confront the ongoing realities of colonialism, the conflicts and violences experienced today due to settler colonial power structures, and here at the Art Gallery of Guelph, a cultural institution based in deeply colonial methods of representation, I remind myself that we need to continue to resist, to rethink, to rework the colonial structures that underpin this institution, the way we operate, along with the colonial structures that have very real, tangible, violent impacts on people's everyday realities. Let's also recognize that land acknowledgements are far from being enough and that we need to take concrete action towards reconciliation, doing so with intention and gratitude. And so here where I am, in the place we now call Guelph, Ontario, we are on the ancestral lands of the Attawandaron people and the Treaty 3 territory and lands of the Mississaugas. This land, of course, has a deep, long, rich, and generationally deep Indigenous history. It's also home to many First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people today, and will be for many, many generations to come. So I invite you in joining me in offering our respect for our Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Métis neighbors here, recognizing that we have much work to do to strengthen our relationships with these communities. And let's offer our respect for the elders of this land from around the world, of the past, present, and future. Cross-Border Dialogues is a series of conversations, as I mentioned, with speakers who work in the cultural sector from across Canada and the United States, addressing a range of topics, including the philosophies that inform their work, their methodologies for engagement, and the role of education and community outreach in their respective practices. This program is presented by the Art Gallery of Guelph, organized by Sally Frater, and is presented with the support of the Canada Council for the Arts and the Guelph Community Foundation. And so to start, I'd like to introduce Sally Frater, who will then continue on to offer brief introductions for Nasrin, our moderator, and Vicky and Bana, our speakers this evening. Sally Frater is the daughter of immigrants from the Caribbean. Curatorially, she is interested in decolonial praxis, space and place, Black and Caribbean diasporas, photography, art of the everyday, and issues of equity and representation in museological spaces. She has curated solo and group exhibitions for institutions such as the Art Gallery of Ontario, the Art Gallery of Guelph, the Ulrich Museum of Art, the Glassell School of Art at the Museum of Fine Arts Houston, Justina M. Barnacky Gallery at the University of Toronto, Project Row Houses, and Center 3 for Artistic and Social Practice. She is now the Senior Curator and Curatorial Manager at the Remy Modern in Saskatoon. Thank you for hosting this evening for us, Sally, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Nicole, for your introduction and your remarks. This evening, I'm joining everyone from Kipaktuk, or Halifax, in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. Before I introduce tonight's speakers, I just wanted to mention one note of housekeeping, and that is that the dialogue will first unfold between tonight's featured speakers and moderator, and then we will open the conversation up to attendees. So during the course of the conversation this evening, you can submit any questions that you may have through the Q&A, I don't know, button or whatever it is, the Q&A function kind of chat box. And then we will turn to them after the conclusion of the main part of tonight's dialogue. So I am very excited for tonight's conversation between Bana Kattan, Vicky Moufawad-Paul, and Nasrin Himada, three curators who have been making critical contributions to the field of curating through their collective or respective explorations of diaspora, memory, place, and belonging. I have known Vicky since 2005. I'm dating both of us here. We met when we were both emerging curators, and for over 20 years, through a very thoughtful and measured curatorial practice, she has done much to direct attention to the work of Southwest Asian and North African diasporic artists within the Canadian art milieu, at a time when there was not necessarily a lot of attention being paid to the work of Swana practitioners before she sort of arrived on the scene. And while it is more recently that I have become familiar with the practices of Bana and Nasrin through colleagues who have spoken very highly of their work, I am very glad to be working in the field concurrently with them, and I am equally grateful for both of their contributions. Bana Kattan is a researcher and curator with experience working in the Arab world and the United States. She is currently the Pamela Alper Associate Curator at the Museum of Contemporary Art Chicago, MCA. Prior to her time at MCA, she was the curator at the New York University Abu Dhabi Art Gallery and researcher to Arab art historian Salwa Mikdadi. She received her MA from the School of the Art Institute of Chicago in 2011 and is a recipient of the Barjeel Global Fellowship, which she held from 2018 to 2019, and is a 2015 recipient of the Getty CAA International Program grants. Vicky Moufawad-Paul, she, her, is a Toronto-based curator and writer. She is the director and curator at A Space Gallery. She has curated exhibitions at the Agnes Etherington Art Center, Carleton University Art Gallery, Gallery 101, MAI Montréal Art Interculturel, Latitude 53, Museum London, the Macintosh Gallery, Contact Photography Festival, Interaccess Electronic Media Art Center, Prefix Institute of Contemporary Art, A Space Gallery, and 16 Beaver. She has an undergraduate degree from the University of Western Ontario and an MFA in film and video from York University. Moufawad-Paul has published texts on several artists, including Haroun Farouki, James Luna, Emily Jassir, Wafa Bilal, Tessir Batniji, Paul Dennis Miller, Deidre Logue, Mohammed Mohsen, Jacqueline Huang Nguyen, Juan Ortiz Apuy, Basil Al-Zari, Erica Lord, John Halak, Rehab Nazal, Adam Broomberg, Oliver Shanarin, Akram Zatari, and Ito Barada. And Nasrin Himada is a Palestinian curator and writer. Their practice is heavily influenced by their long-term friendships and their many ongoing collaborations with artists, filmmakers, and poets. Nasrin's recent project, For Many Returns, experiments with writing as an act dictated by love and typifies their current curatorial interests, which foreground embodiment, desire, transformation, and liberation through many forms. Nasrin currently holds the position of Associate Curator at Agnes Etherington Arts Centre, Queen's University in Kingston, Ontario. So, Nasrin, I'm going to turn things over to you now.
Wow, thank you so much, Sally. It's been so nice to get to know you too, and I'm so happy to be here with Vicky, who I've also known for some time now, and getting to know Bana too. Preparing for this conversation, I've gotten to know a lot of your projects now, and very excited to get into conversation with the both of you. I think I want to just get started because, as Bana pointed out earlier, the questions are intense and big, and I think we should just get right to it. And I'm very excited to hear what you both have to say. Um, I think we'll start a bit easy, and just if each of you can begin, and maybe Vicky will start with you. I want to ask each of you to tell us the story of how you got to curating. I am always interested in people's trajectories, how they ended up where they did, and why they continue to do what they do. Especially these days, I'm consistently reminding myself of how art, poetry, and film can inspire modes of liberation and innovate forms that contend with the world we're part of and simultaneously inspire us to transform it. So I'm curious to know more about your history and your present moment and how they relate or how they've diverged.
Yeah, thank you so much for that question. And thank you, Sally, for the beautiful introduction. It's so nice to be with everybody. Yeah, I really appreciate it. And yeah, what a great question. So I won't begin with the day I was born, but it kind of could. So it's interesting. We had a family friend. She was friends with my mom, and her daughter was my age, and she was a visual artist. And so I would go to their house, and she was a portrait painter, and so she had a room of her own. She had a studio where she was always painting, and she would take me in there and show me what she was working on. And it was just a beautiful, calm, incredible space. She also took my family to a number of galleries and museums as we were growing up. So I think having her as an influence gave me the idea that being an artist, and that going to museums, that this was something that was possible and that it was beautiful. It was really great. Um, so so there was that. And then on the other hand, I was born during the Civil War in Lebanon. And I remember one of the first movies I saw, Back to the Future. There was a Libyan wearing a keffiyeh and saying something that was supposed to be Arabic but was gibberish. And I was, what is that? What is that ridiculous image I'm seeing? And of course, watching the news. And there were stories that was often told in my family of a Palestinian child who went to school and wore a shirt that said, it didn't say Free Palestine, it simply said Palestine. And the child was sent home from school. And this was a story that people love to tell, because we were new immigrants in Canada, and saying, just kind of be careful as you send your kids to school about, how things are going to go. So, and one of my first projects in elementary school was about the first Gulf War, and about George Bush. And so watching that on the news, and of course the wild misrepresentations, I was trying to communicate about that to my classmates, the other elementary school students. And then of course in university there was 9/11, the second Iraq War, Afghanistan, and now, Syria, the ongoing Nakba in Palestine. I remember George Bush Sr. saying, we're going to bomb them into the Stone Ages. And so that image has really been, unfortunately, has been something, this terrible thing that we're contending with over and over. So, I knew that somehow I wanted to be involved in, I was just passionately, drawn to somehow contending with this kind of misrepresentation, because my experience of my culture and my history was totally different than what I was seeing. And when I wanted to go into the arts, my mom called that friend. At that point, we weren't as close anymore. And she said, bring your sketchbook and I want you to talk to her. And she said, sure, you could do it. But at that point, I wanted to be an artist. And she said, you could be an artist, but you have to, every other option has to be exhausted. That, you just can't do anything else because it's not easy. So, I kind of took that with me, that just the expectation is that, it's not easy, but it's something you do because you love it and there's nothing else that you could be doing. So that is, so that's sort of the origin. And then when I finished my MFA in film and video production at York University, and actually while I was doing it, there were so few venues, really no venues that were interested. I shouldn't say no venues. There were a couple places where I could find some evidence that there were Arab artists even. V-Tape was one of them, which was great, looking in their archive. And the public library had a file on Jamili Hassan, and it was all like photocopied newspaper clippings of her work. But yeah, it meant so much to me to be able to look at that, right? So, so there were very few venues that were interested in this kind of work, and I was. So I started, working with my community of artists and activists. We were all students together, and we just started putting on events. So mostly films, also exhibitions, and we just started doing it. We knew that there was, we knew what we wanted to see, we knew what we wanted to do, and other people were really interested. We got really good feedback, really good community building. And, I was told at one point from somebody in an institution that if diaspora was interesting, there would be more about it out there. And I was like, well, I'm convinced it's interesting, and, time will tell. So, and clearly time has shown, there are so many more programs and professors to work with. Of course, I had no professors to work with who even understood at all what I was interested in or what I was doing. So it's kind of, it just, so there's a couple strands there. But in terms of the and I would say that I started out as an artist. I didn't really know that there was a career as curating. I didn't know that you could make a life doing that. But I just was doing it without even knowing what it was called. And I knew that that's what I wanted to keep doing. So yeah, that answers it.
Yeah, totally. And it really resonates with me, Vicky, because it's the same. I didn't even until very recently realize that I came to curating because I was trying to create a different curriculum for myself at school, that I wanted to see and read things and create a discourse around the things that I care about, like diaspora, thinking about dispossession and displacement and grief and love of land, all kind of, embroiled into this also very complicated position of having come here, this place called Canada, because I couldn't through many generations be on my land in Palestine. So It's always interests me to ask this question about the kind of origin stories, because I think a lot of us coming up as curators, and I know you and I did too at the same time, is it's often not, we don't think that we're not doing it as a job or going toward it as a profession. And it comes from these other kind of urgencies and passions, and also, and out of necessity too, as you say, to create a space for what we want to know and how we want to know it. Yeah. Bana, I don't know if, yeah, Bana, it's your turn. I would love to hear your story and how you got to where you got. And I know now you're in Chicago, and but I know you were also very much involved curating in the Arab world. So very different, I think, trajectory too.
Yeah, thank you so much. Really, I think going along what you're saying is really makes me think, representation really matters. And it brings me back to the first conversation I had for this panel, which was just with Sally. And this is shout out to Sally. Thank you for inviting me. But, she did talk about how hard it was to find a Palestinian curator in the US. You can count us on one hand. And so, let alone just an Arab curators are even hard to find in the US. So, I also want to thank Nicole for everything and for keeping us organized and making sure that I arrive on time, which was not a given. Okay, and then how I ended up becoming a curator. I mean, it wasn't the plan originally, similar to you, Vicky. And I fell into it, though the plan was for me to be in the arts. I was planning on being in the performing arts and working with performing artists. But 15 years ago, in a way, I've come full circle because I did an internship at the institution that I work at now. I haven't been here for 15 years. I left, I went back to the Arab world, and I came back. But I was doing an internship while I was also doing my master's. The visual arts kind of lured me. I was in the performance department because I really thought I was going to be in performance. And I was just interested in the way that people interacted with the visual arts. And so I kind of switched sides to the museum world. But I also very much credit Selma Miqdadi, who is my mentor and best friend for life. And I credit her for teaching me my art history. So exactly what you were just saying, we have to write our own academics and classes. You can't really take a proper class in our art history. So I was Selma Miqdadi's researcher for 2 years, and I consider that my modern and contemporary Arab art education in those 2 years. So I couldn't do what I did today, what I do now, without having that base. So yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, thank you both for that. I think to also bring it just to contextualize your work and your practice, and you've both done so much. I'm really curious and to talk more about, well, how you're feeling now and today at this time, and when we are constantly confronted by the violences of the world. And how do you feel that curatorial work is necessary? And can you contextualize for us the ways in which your projects have continued to be relevant to what's going on right now in Palestine and elsewhere? And please feel free to also talk about a specific project that you want to anchor that story with. Vicky, you want to go?
Sure. Okay. So I am going to tell you, well, it's funny, I wasn't going to talk about this project, but I think I will. There was a project that I did in 2000 and let me just see, I believe it was 2008, called Enacting Emancipation. And it was co-curated with an Indigenous curator, Tanith Nielsen. It's really also, she's a really amazing writer and artist. And I learned so much in that collaboration. It was a 4-person show: James Luna, Emily Jassid, Erica Lord, and John Halaka. And you know, you know, it was the 60th memorial of the Palestinian Nakba. So I had wanted to do, you know, something to commemorate that. And it's interesting because people at the time used to say, you know, as Palestinians, what we want is we want to be treated like indigenous people here because they're allowed to go to school for free. And I was like, uh, I had heard that said in the community, you know, more than once. And I was like, I don't think that's correct, guys. I'm pretty sure you, you know, there's a history here that's not being interrogated. That's just kind of a black box that we don't look at. And so, you know, Tanis very generously wanted to look at that together. And so I'll just read you, you know, like just 2 sentences from the opening of the essay that we wrote together. And says, when addressing the similarity of colonial oppressions between the indigenous peoples of North America and Palestine, it is crucial to remember the words of the late Edward Said, who stated that the task at hand was for the individual to universalize the crisis, to give greater human scope to what a particular race or nation suffered, and to associate that experience with the suffering of others. So we were looking to think about this kind of international system of colonial technique to kind of reveal the diverse localized modes of resistance. You know, we weren't trying to homogenize, but we were, I don't even know if we used solidarity in the text. Like, it was so early in all of this, but of course what we were thinking about was solidarity, right? And so that was like a, you know, a really generative exhibition. It was interesting for me too, because like Indigenous artists have been thinking so much, and James Luna particularly had been, his work was just like, I just learned so much from thinking about his work and from you know, spending time with him and with Tanis and with Erica Lord. Emily Jasser and John Halaka joined us for a panel discussion, but they were on Zoom. They were both in Palestine, and James Luna and Erica Lord were with us in person, which was amazing. So James Luna has since passed away, so we would say Allah Yarhamu. Yeah, so that was, you know, that was a really pivotal exhibition, and I was like, wow, we can really do things here. We can really make conversations. We can change narratives, and of course, Edward Said says too that you know, one of the greatest struggles is the struggle over narrative. So it was just felt, you know, like quite empowering that we could make this conversation happen and that people were responsive and wanted to hear it. So, you know, Toronto is a progressive place, so it's a good place to do it. And then another exhibition that I really loved actually was at the Agnes Etherington Art Centre, where you are now, Nasrin, which is also a great place.
We have so many copies of that catalog of that.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, and I just often give it as gifts because it's so beautiful. Yeah, and anyway, and then I kept the poster of, yeah, when you had the exhibition. Anyway, I have also some other ephemera, but
I don't
yeah.
have a poster of it, so that's great.
Or maybe it was something else. I can't remember.
Okay. Well, thank you. Yeah. Oh, that's so great. Yeah, it was so great to work with a bigger institution and to do the publication, and you know, and Akram Zatari was like one of my heroes that I never thought I would work with. So it was just so nice to actually then, you know, we applied for several grants, and you know, the Agnes Etherington, and it was also Carleton University Art Gallery was the partner with the Agnes. And so those 2 institutions were like so supportive and amazing. And Akram obviously is really a fascinating artist. And some of the work in that exhibition was really nice because he was, thinking about the Lebanese Civil War and the way that there's so few, that history has not been written in a definitive way. And the official view of the government is to just look towards the future and rebuilding, and it's kind of historical amnesia, forget about the past. And so he anchors his work in the kind of, what should I call it? Like these like primarily personal documents. So letters, journals, diaries, personal correspondence. Uh, photographs that people sent each other. And so it's just such a feminist way, really, of looking at war, right? So looking at it through the personal. And then the stories that he picks are so beautiful and poetic, but also sort of make a point. There are queer love stories. There are, communist fighters who are in solidarity across ethnic and religious lines. And so it's just, really a kind of liberatory kind of work, I think, that he's doing. And then even those works, he doesn't try to close the meaning of them. So, really thinking about archives and kind of institutional archives and national histories, and to really leave them open to that, in the future there may be new information. And I think that artists from many places, but also from Palestine and from Lebanon, have been really, really, pushing that, we cannot know everything, and that we hope that more information will come out, and we will understand things in a more full way one day. And so yeah, I mean, one of his pieces was called Letter to Samir, and it was half an hour of Samir El-Quintar, Israel's longest held Lebanese prisoner, and Nabi Awada writes a letter to him. And Nabi Awada is, it's like this painstaking, like a kind of a prison letter. So he's, drawing the lines and then writing, and then folding it really small, wrapping it in plastic, sealing the plastic, because of course these letters are illicit. If it was found by the authorities, it would be confiscated, it could be punished. So we see kind of the form, but we never get to see what's inside the letter. And then so we had that video, and then we had these beautiful vitrines around it, and they were the letters from Ascalon and letters from family and friends, and 48 portraits of prisoners dedicated to Nabi Awada. So they were prisoners were finally allowed to have their photos taken and allowed to share their photos. So we were, we exhibited the photographs that prisoners shared among each other. So it was just, yeah. So there's always so much more to say, but I'll let you go, Bana.
Thank you. All right, I'm trying to go back to the original question. So the had bombardment by violence in the world, and the reality is that I am not functioning well. I truly have to figure out how it feels impossible to continue my work every day and come to my job every day. So that is a daily practice that I have to figure out. As for how it comes into my, like how, the other part of the question was how our work is important. I think I'm not a person that believes that art can make the world a better place or something like that, but I do believe that it makes humans more human. And I do believe that we contextualize and tell stories in a way that is received in a different way. And I think that can make a difference. So yeah, that's how I think. And then according to which exhibition I worked on that I love, you're kind of you're asking us to choose a favorite child, which you should never do, but I would say maybe working with Sandy Hilal and Alessandro Petti, an exhibition that I did with co-curated by Salma Mqdadi and I, called Permanent Temporariness. And this exhibition really looked at almost every contemporary angle of what it is to be Palestinian. And these artists are also architects. And so they think about their work in an angle that is so unique to any other visual artists that I've come across. They're so spatially and intellectually smart. And it's really like the exhibition was, I mean, Salwa and I were so lucky to work with them. But realistically, whoever did their show, it would have been amazing. We're just the lucky ones that got it. And if we were going to give a specific example of an artwork, Vicky, the one you chose is one of my favorites. Letters to Samir is amazing. But an example of an artwork, I would say Sandy and Alessandro in this exhibition, they did a piece called Refugee Heritage. And this piece was an official application to the UNESCO, to claim the Dheisheh refugee camp, which is the oldest refugee camp ever. It's been standing since 1949. And so how do we now claim this as a World Heritage Site was the question that this piece was putting forward. And how do you deny a place that has, at this point, 75 years of history, generations were born in there? How can you say that that kind of place is temporary? But at the same time, of course, because of the right of return, we Palestinians don't want to say that our refugee camps are permanent. They are supposed to be temporary. We're not. And yet this refugee camp it's a city. It's a city that's made up of a refugee camp. And so really the complexities in that work were so it's so important for Palestinians to think about, but at the same time, such a good understanding for people who have no idea what's going on in Palestine. And so I think that artwork that can reach different audiences and at different scales can really make a big difference. Rather than us Palestinians going backwards and trying to explain our history to people who have no idea, can we make work that is for us, but also for them? And Sandy and Alessandro, hands down, they do it the most successfully that I've ever come across. So that's my spiel.
Can you say more about, I guess, maybe just more contextualizations around making work for us and for them? Just how are you creating that relation?
Yeah, I think Sky Hopinka, for example, who's a Native American artist, he says it very directly in almost every talk that he gives. He says that like he makes work for the Native American audiences and he refuses to backtrack and catch people up that don't know. And so when you have that stance, and especially because I'm a curator that started my career in the Arab world and I moved here, one of the things that I try to do when I curate is ask myself, would I be doing and saying what I'm doing here that I would there? Would it be interesting to the Arab world as much as it is interesting here? And that's my way of kind of tackling the fact that I don't want to be catering to just the US audience. I want to move our conversation and art history and all the contemporary art of Arabs globally forward. And so, yeah.
I find this actually really interesting, and maybe Vicky, if you want to speak a little to that, I'm going off script now, but do you who do you address when you're creating your shows, your exhibitions, your programs? Do you have a specific way of looking at who it is that you want to reach?
If I'm interested in it, then I assume that my audience is very educated. Actually, I assume that my audience is seeing thousands of images every day, and um, and occasionally, people come into the gallery and they ask questions, they have trouble with an image, and I'm super happy to help them out and, talk them through it or share some materials with them. Um, so Bana, I agree with you. I think that's exactly, we cannot be starting at the beginning every time. We need to, have the conversation where we're at, in terms of, the conceptual, like challenging conceptual photography. I mean, you're not going to just have, clear images all the time. You're going to have, Ito Barada with her, claustrophobic and, opaque images. It just wouldn't be interesting if we were doing anything else, I think.
Thank you. I think, yeah, I want to move forward and just so, Bana, to go back to your that I made you choose between your favorite child, which wasn't true. I was talking about how it continues to be relevant. And then I was thinking about, because the next question then maybe it might be that one, is I would like for you to think about, and again, a recent project that you curated that you really loved and that you were proud of. Another one that you feel like kind of, in some ways has marked you as a curator.
Honestly, every artist that I work with they're truly amazing, and they articulate things that there's no way I could articulate. And that's why, we are curators, because most of us, not all of us, feel like, or at least I do, I feel like I can never do what they're doing. So I'm just gonna be the middleman that like bolsters this conversation. But I mean, I have an exhibition up right now with an artist called Mariam Tagavi. Her work's amazing, and I'm doing an exhibition soon with Wafa Bilal, who I know also Vicky worked with. So, and these are two artists that I just feel like they haven't had the chance to be heard enough. And so that's honestly how I choose the artists that I work with. It's neither one have galleries, for example, which is like another way of gatekeeping that shouldn't be the case, So so yeah, I would say, I'm really excited about the show I'm doing with Wafa Bilal, probably because I'm in the middle of it and I just finished writing the 4,000 word essay. I genuinely feel a weight off of my shoulders. I sent that in 2 days ago. So yeah, first survey exhibition.
Oh, nice. I was just going to say, if there's a way for you to take us a bit deeper, why do you love his work so much? Why does it move you?
I think Wafa has a way of foreshadowing our use of technology and how we're going to use it, or how it's going to progress in the world. And he was kind of one of the first artists that was really doing performance and technology in the Arab world as intensely as he did. One of the performances that he did in Chicago in 2007 is a piece called Domestic Tension, where he lived in a gallery for a whole month with a paintball gun that was hooked up to the internet, and he gave people access to shoot him 24 hours a day from the internet. And so I think, when you do something like that, there's a way of collapsing geographies where you really are bringing Iraq to the internet, to people all over the world. And the best part of that whole work was, for me, in my opinion, is the chat that was going on. There was like a live chat that he would also participate in. And in 2007, this chat was showing you what the future of social media looks like, and how the anonymity of humans on the internet and the way that they decide to comment and participate in conversation was going to be way different. And so, you know, the artists just have a way of doing that. And yeah, and it's really inspiring.
Vicky, I want to give you just a chance if you wanted to add anything else to that, or if there's anything you wanted to, yeah, if there was a project you just want to bring up that has been dear to you as well.
Yeah, there was a project. So Bana, I totally agree with that. Bilal's work is so great for all those reasons you were describing. So there was a project that I did in 2012 called A Refusal of Images. And it was Adam Broomberg and Oliver Shenren and Rahab Nazal. And so what was interesting, actually, it was the homeworks that me and you were at, Nasrin. So, and so did you attend their talk too? Anyway, I attended their talk.
I don't remember. I was trying to remember when I was preparing for this because I saw, yeah, anyway, I saw you sent me the link, but I was like, oh my God, I don't remember this anyway.
Yes, it was really interesting to attend their talk in Lebanon because at Homeworks, the audience is so like take no prisoners. Like they would just say, you know, they would just ask questions like, how is this political? Like you're contextualizing this as though it is political. Tell us how it is so. Was the question that they got for the project that I ended up having them bring to the gallery. And sorry, let me just pull up so that I don't say the wrong titles of works, because as you both know, there's so many artists and so many works. So I just want to so The Day Nobody Died. So so in that work, so that was the work they were presenting at Homeworks. And so what they did was they were embedded journalists. So they are based in the UK. One is British and the other one is South African, but they were embedded journalists in Afghanistan. And so they were, wearing military fatigues and attending the press briefings every day. And so they were, but what they did instead of, taking photographs like you would, like a photojournalist would do, they had this big box of photo paper, and they would, so it would be, this was the day that 100 people died. So they would make that the headline of the work, and they would open the paper a few meters, and so expose it, and then roll it back up. And so what you get are these kind of abstract photographs that are a representation of, the heat, the wind, the light of that day. And then the title, the caption is, anchors it on the date. And then, the day the 100 died, the fixer's execution, the Duke of York, the day nobody died, these kinds of what would have been fed to them by the military kind of complex. And so that was when people in Lebanon asked, okay, so how's that political? Like it's, it's really kind of absurd. And then they had, it's beautiful for sure. But what's going on with it? And then they had a video of the box. So they're focused on the box, not on themselves or any other person, but the box going from, military location to another military location. So kind of this opaque system of moving through, the American military zones in Afghanistan and Iraq and these different, which would be highly, highly controlled. But, you're kind of seeing it on the truck go through. It's kind of this absurd performance of this like box that's going to record, but it's, never quite a clear recording. And so I was really fascinated by it. And I spoke to them after, and they were like, why are you fascinated by it? I was like, I don't know yet, but I just know that this is something very interesting. And then Rahab Nazal, who is a Palestinian artist who was based in Toronto at the time, she was doing her master's at Toronto Metropolitan University, formerly called Ryerson. And she came by my office. We'd never met before. And she said, my office door is like generally open, not always, but often. It was that day, as luck would have it. And she said, I'm an artist. Can I show you my work? And I said, I have time right now. And she said, I have it on my laptop. And I was like, perfect, sit down, let's look at it together. And it was amazing because we did, so then she had these beautiful, really incredible, sensitive, brilliant works. And A Night at Home, which is a video in Jenin, where her family is from. She was there with her kids, and there was bombs going off, and her son is saying, Mom, what's going on? She's like, shh, I don't know. And he's like, can I turn the light on? She's like, no, don't turn the light on, stay down, stay quiet. And all you see is just complete black and a couple tiny little dots of light. So the whole exhibition was an exhibition that was lens-based, where you really can't see anything. And so this to me, this was, a very important project, because I actually, where it came from was my own experience of being a filmmaker and going to demonstrations before the iPhone was invented and before YouTube was invented. And so, you are, the cops, the FTA protest in 1999, the cops were throwing tear gas at people. It was in Quebec City. We were running. It was like a cat and mouse thing. I had my camera, and I was trying to record the faces of my, my friends, and you couldn't really see like how we were choking and how red it was. Like the camera just wasn't picking it up. It just wasn't sensitive enough. And also, like, I was running, so it was all, and so I felt so disempowered by that. But then seeing these artists do that, I was like, this actually is an example of, this is something very important. And it was right after the Arab Spring as well. So now everybody was taking photos with their phone, and we were seeing many images like that. So I wanted to kind of elevate those images and think about, the importance of those images. So for me, that was such like an awesome, important project. And me and Rahab have worked together many times since then. So it's nice when you do projects, and then, you become friends for life. So.
That was so beautiful. And I really love what you just said earlier, Vicky, too, that you really were moved by it, but didn't understand why. And I feel like that's the feeling that I always go toward, like when I'm want to curate or create a space or think about a program that's going to bring this type of affect into the room, that it's really about getting in touch, something tapping into something that we just don't know yet, and that we're gonna maybe get to know it. And I think that's something, and that it's going to be shared collectively, that this feeling will also somehow reverberate in the room and also be shared, is really powerful. I know it's 7:30, and I think we go until 8, and I want to give the audience some time to ask their questions, but I will ask one more and then we can move forward. I really wanted to ask this question because I think about it all the time. When I think about what drives my vision or desire in terms of staying with this work. So I'll just read it. Thinking about resistance and forms of liberation, and how in the Palestine context, liberation is tied to the dreams of going home. I heard a Gazan boy talk about how this is the ultimate dream, the resistance against colonialism. is that the dream is to go home, to reach his grandfather's house. And he put it beautifully. He said, "Is there a dream bigger than going back home?" As Palestinian curators from the diaspora and hearing this, how does your vision for liberation manifest? Is it conditioned by this dream of return? And how does it connect to other forms of solidarity in your practice? I know, Vicky, you touched on this already. If you want to expand, this would be a good time to do that too.
Do you want, I can go first, sure. Okay, so I was thinking about this. So this, the dream of return is so, it's tied up in all of our liberatory dreams, and so things like freedom of movement, equal rights, equal access to land, education. I think about the genocide in Sudan and the Congo, Tamil communities, Kurdish communities, the migrants that are fleeing war and economic conditions imposed across the world. So for me, the dream of return is like a dream of healing on a global scale. So not to say that it's a metaphor, it's, I believe in the legal right of return. But I think that to be achieved, it has to be intertwined and linked up with all of our struggles for freedom. And, the specific histories and conditions and geographies will all be, we need to, as we come together in solidarity, we become, much more stronger and also much more humble in our approach. Just, sort out the tangle that is, that is our current condition.
Bana?
Yeah, this is a big question. I think, when I think about resistance and the right of return, I definitely think of like the most simple saying that I never really connected to until I moved to the US, or I connected to it, of course, in the Arab world, but much more so here, which is the idea of existence is resistance, just saying that you're Palestinian. Really, when I got to the US, I really felt at a different level the want of erasure. It's really intense, and I was not expecting it. And even more so this, in the past 6 months. And so I think of, I want to return to Palestine as a Palestinian that's not Americanized. I was listening to somebody today who was from the south of the United States, and he said something that really struck me, which is that he said that he had the Southern accent educated out of him. And I often feel that I have to resist the chipping away at my Palestinianness or even my Arabness. And so my personal focus is to resist that assimilation that they want so much from us. Another thing that I have to say is that as much as that is my dream, is to return in my full Palestinianness, I will never fulfill that dream, because the reality is that all of the Palestinians in the diaspora will never truly understand what living in Palestine as a Palestinian is really like. And so it's kind of a dream that I know I'll never fully have, even when we do return. And the second part of that question was, I don't remember. It's a very long question.
It's about how hold on. How does it connect to other forms of solidarity in your practice as you live and work on lands that were also forcibly taken?
Yeah, I think other acts of solidarity, honestly, I think that there's a failure in even Palestinian curators, including myself, in the diaspora. But all curators, including the Western ones, we have a major tendency to curate artists also from the diaspora who speak English well and who say all the right words and have all the right vocabulary. And I think one of the things that we can all do better is work with artists that are not in the diaspora, that are in the actual places that we're talking about. And so this is not the answer because you asked me what I'm doing, and I'm telling you what I hope to do better instead.
Not sure if there are questions from the chat or if we want to take some audience questions now, Sally, or keep going because I have a couple of more questions.
Do you actually want to keep going for a bit? We have
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
But it would be good if you kept going. Okay, thanks.
So I have this, well, I think this is a fun question. Let's see if you guys will think it's fun. What have you seen lately that has inspired you? What has stuck out for you as of late? And it can really be anything, an exhibition, a book you read, a podcast you listened to, a performance you attended. What made it so good?
Do you want to go first, Bana?
Sure, I'm happy to. This is a fun question. My answer is number one, all the kafiyas that are at the MCA Chicago. I mean, the visitors that come to the MCA wearing a kafiyeh really, truly inspire me. And the other answer would be I'm reading a book right now that I really love, and I'm kind of like reading it very slowly because I don't want it to end. I don't know if you've ever done that, but it's also a very heavy book, so I'm also taking my time. It's called The Body Keeps a Score, and it's really about how the trauma lives in the body, and it's impossible not to think about the trauma that we're going through now and how long it's going to continue to be with us. So.
Yeah, I haven't read that yet, but I want to. It's I probably will now that you've brought it up. So I saw an exhibition at the Contemporary Museum in Barcelona, Spain, and it was called Song for Many Movements, Scenes of Collective Creation. And they had 50 artists. It was the whole floor of that first floor of the museum was that exhibition. It was like a complex documentary of moving image work, sounds, publications, printmaking, tons and tons of archival material. Like it was a library, you could spend a lot of time there. So there was, things from militant cinema, community video cooperatives, like adorable things about kids talking about, their experiences with all kinds of things. But Arab kids talking about racism and in Europe, that was, from like the early 80s. Like it was just it's really, really beautifully done. They had a part of Hours of the Furnace was playing. Like there were posters that you could take, there was, material you could take and space to sit and also just spend time there. So just from their website, they said it connected to the 1969 Pan-African Festival of Algiers, International Palestinian Exhibition in Beirut, 1978, International Resistance Museum in Exile, 1973 to 1989, and the HIV/AIDS crisis, which for me is just so much more relevant when thinking about COVID and how important it is to think, and also about, this crisis of, this health crisis that, anyway, multiple health crises, but that it's not individualized, that it's political and that it's collective, is the way to deal with it. And then I read this book by Asia Dabar called So Vast the Prison. It was published in 1995. It had been on my shelf, not since 1995, but for a long time. And I finally read it last year. And it was it was just, I feel, it was really beautiful. It was a female narrator who's looking back at generations of women and their changing linguistic circumstances as evidence for the changing political circumstances. So again, it's that really taking, those really personal moments and saying like, that's evidence of these political transformations, which is like a thing that I love to see in general. It was after, after the French left and Algeria and yeah, so this kind of like Berber, French, Arabic, and the like, how language kind of comes to the forefront and then recedes depending on who's in power. And then there was another, so Taisir Batniji, a Gazan artist, just has a new publication. So he's an amazing, wonderful artist. Really interesting conceptual work, drawings and photography and installations. And he has a new book called Disruptions. So I would say that book just came out this year. So 1995, this year, it's all good.
Amazing. Thank you for that. Yeah, I feel like I do want to, I'm glad I get to ask all these questions. And yeah, I have this one I've been dying to ask you guys is, what's your advice? I also always love to ask this question to myself so that I can think about what values I keep practicing and what values I want to keep kind of thinking about and to hold close to my heart. And so what advice would you give for emerging curators coming up at this time? And what would you tell them that you wish someone told you? And how do you feel at this time being a mentor? And do you still seek guidance from your own mentors? How significant is mentorship to you in your curatorial practice? Maybe Bana can go since Vicky's.
Okay. So the number one thing I would say is just please become a curator. Do it. And then when you do it, elevate the artists. We have, like I was saying before, I feel like I've already answered this throughout the talk, but we have a lack of representation. My mentor, I'm going to see her in 2 weeks. So I'm still, she's very much, Salwa is very much a big part of my life and will forever be. I enjoy, of course, mentoring now. The other thing that I would advise emerging curators is what I've already said, which is don't forget about the artists that are not right next to you in the diaspora, that are beyond the diaspora. That's it.
Yeah, that's good advice, Bana. I wish you had been able to tell me that years ago. Well, it's interesting, there's so many, there's programs where you can study to become a curator. I would seek out curators who are doing things that you are interested in. Like Bana, you said you just finished a 4,000-word essay. So if anyone wants to be a curator, they should seek out your essay. They should read it and take notes and then ask you questions. Like, this is an amazing way to learn, right? So yeah, I mean, I didn't study in one of those curatorial programs, so I don't, so my mentors now are I consider them my good friends and my colleagues, right? And I feel that it was my community were my mentors. Like, I feel that we were all, we were supporting each other, teaching each other, and people have gone on to do different things. Some are heads of like Middle Eastern Studies department or political science department or, you know, visual art. Like people have all gone on to do different things. So, you know, and the other thing is that you have an idea of what you might do, but perhaps be open that you're going to learn as you're doing. And that what is actually like the right fit for you will kind of come into play as you're doing it. So I would just really start doing the things that you feel drawn to, that you feel passionate about. Just, you know, just start taking risks. It's totally scary, but just put it out there, do it with your friends. You know, you don't have to be alone in it. And you know, and then like one thing follows another. Things kind of you know, yeah. What about you, Nasrin?
Yeah, I was gonna say,
What's your
Nasrin, I was gonna say the exact same thing. Could you please answer the question?
Wow. Okay. Yeah. I mean, it's true because I did say I ask this question to myself all the time, but when I think about it, I was just thinking about what I told my students recently is that I think it's really important to think about what your values are and actually write them down. And, you know, to me, for example, it's like, what am I holding on to? Things like, how do I practice generosity in an institution? How do I practice transparency in institutions that don't want to practice that, for example, right? How do I really stay honest to myself and faithful to myself in a way that's going to, you know, the only way I think I can stay honest to myself is if I know what these words are and what they mean to me. So I do ask my students actually to think of, whenever they think of a value that's important to them, that they write it down and think about how they practice that every day. And it doesn't matter whether you want to be a curator, if you're already practicing, or if you're an artist. It's really about how you navigate the world in some ways and how you want to be in relation with communities and people. So I feel like that would be my advice is to really think about that. What values are, how do you define values and what do they mean to you? Yeah. And then I have many mentors that are also older and younger than me. And I think intergenerational exchanges are very significant to how I want to think and feel in the world and who I want to be in relationship with. So I really admire a lot of, yeah, like you said, Vicky, the people who I often collaborate with, who I continue to work with. So I don't work with just one-off artists. I have worked with the artists I've worked with them many times over, and they are people in my life. And yeah, we tend to stay close to each other. And, you know, I call it a cohabitation, even if we're not living in the same place. So that's kind of my mentorship in a way too, that I really think with the people who I admire the most. But also I want to also acknowledge the ones who came before us. So I also really focus in on curators who came up before me in the world, like Vicky, you and I have formed ourselves in, you know, Toronto, this kind of place.
Again, thank you for such a wonderful talk. I'm so grateful and I'm really excited to review this when it is posted. And I also like that you have given us kind of action items to work on for those of us who are engaged with diaspora. Thank you, Bana. And I would like to again thank our three speakers, Bana Kattan, Vicky Moufawad-Paul, and Nasrin Himada. Yes, I'm so happy. Thank you. And I would like to remind all of our viewers that we will be concluding the final dialogue in this series on Tuesday, June the 18th at 6:30 p.m. Eastern. It will feature Tara Hogue and Pablo Pereira. Again, I looked forward to all of these talks, but I think that will also be a really great one to end on. So thanks again to everyone, and thank you for joining us this evening, and thank you again to our speakers. Have a good
Thank you,
evening.
Sally. Thank you so much, Sally and Nicole and everyone at the Art Gallery of Guelph. And thank you, Bana and Vicky.
Yes, thank you so much, Sally. You're so thoughtful and wonderful. It's just really lovely. And thank you, Nicole, and for everybody at the Art Gallery of Guelph, and for the funders and everybody. And of course, Nasrin and Bana, I want to just keep talking to you guys forever. So hopefully we'll stay in touch too.
Yeah, it was really so nice to meet everybody. I'm so grateful for this talk. Thank you.